Thanks so much for speaking with us here at the 5 Mile Network this evening. And I've got lots of questions for you, but before I kind of get into those, I thought I'd ask you at the start, just give us a little bit of a sketch. You're one of the most venerable inhabitants of the village. And you're also a little bit of a village historian. Give us a little bit of a sketch of just what life was like when you were a kid.
Okay. So I was born in here on School Corner in 1947. And I was just saying to one of the ladies, my mum was born at the top of New Inn Hill in 1914, and I've got relations around here since 1600, so I've done all the family history. Blacksmiths lived in here in 1750, in Rockland, Surlingham, all over the place. Relations everywhere, but all very local. Nobody travelled. So my dad died when I was 6. He had tuberculosis. We had a hut at the bottom of the garden, which used to turn to get the sun and the fresh air in.
Yeah, this is kind of amazing that whole hut could be moved.
Yeah, that was on a turntable, and you could just turn. As a child, I could turn the hut round.
I love one of those.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
But supplied obviously by, I don't know whether it was I was only 6, so I didn't know. But my father used to go to Kelling to get the pine air, as they called it then, for tuberculosis. But then he died, and so my mum had 5 children. £1.50 a week, I think, was the widow's pension. So we had a big garden, as all the council houses along here all got big gardens, and everybody grew their own vegetables. The local shop, the post office, wouldn't sell vegetables because wouldn't stock them because no one would buy them.
So were people self-sufficient in vegetables?
Yeah, absolutely and food as well. I mean, my grandfather kept 200 rabbits, so our main food was rabbit. We ate rabbits all the while. He would go to market on Culling's buses, which was my grandfather's buses, and he would take he'd kill 25 rabbits on a Saturday morning and then take them up to Norwich market and sell them. And he would have his hogweed round around here, so nobody else would. Do you know what hogweed is? Yeah. So he would feed the rabbits on hogweed. Every morning, every night, his cycle, he would have a big sack on the front, big sack on the back, and he would have an area which was his, and then someone further down the road would have an area. No one would take the hogweed from his area. So we.
So that was like an informal kind of arrangement.
Oh, absolutely, informal, completely informal. So I would go to school. I'd come home at say about 3:30. 2 hours in the garden every night, because that was what everybody did.
That was what everybody did.
Everybody did. Yeah, we grew our own vegetables. I can remember, and of course we didn't have. First of all, we didn't have running water in the council house, not till 1962. So we had a pump at the bottom of the garden where we get the water. We'd have a tin bath, and then the toilet was a bucket. We had a proper building, but you had a wooden seat and the bucket, and you emptied the bucket when it needed emptying.
And where did you empty it?
So you would dig the garden. You'd start at the top of the garden and you'd work your way around the garden. So we used to dig a 6 by 6 and 6 foot deep hole, and then because obviously you didn't have bin collections either, all the rubbish went into the hole, and then you'd cover it over. Then the next week you do the same.
But you say rubbish. I'm assuming,
well,
for
everything.
example, there wouldn't.
Tins, everything.
Yeah, but there probably wouldn't have been much plastic, for example.
No plastic.
Right, no plastic.
Hardly any cardboard.
Right.
So tins were really the only rubbish as such, because all our vegetables came from the garden. So therefore we didn't buy vegetables.
So that your urine and feces became
everything.
Manure, became fertiliser over time.
And my mother used to work in many of the market gardens, and we used to get 1 cartload of manure a year, and she would work so many hours and get paid with manure. Wow. She would be stone picking on the fields over the back here. They used to stone pick to take, and she would do say 7 or 8 hours work, and then we'd get a cartload of muck.
And then you'd spread that, and that would help your vegetables grow.
The vegetables grow. Yeah. And of course we grew all the berries, blackberries.
Tell us what vegetables you grew and what fruit you grew.
We would mainly potatoes, beans, peas, carrots, onions. That would be the main ones that we grow. Nothing fancy. Right. Because basically you lived on rabbit stew. Right, in the mornings, my breakfast was bread and milk. That was what we had. We never had cereals. Because again, this was 1950. 53, 54, just the end of rationing.
Yes.
No help at all with anything, so that's what you ate. And everyone in the village was in the sun. No one thought anyone... There was one gentleman, Mr. Wink, who had a garage where you come up Rookery Hill. On the left, the new houses, there was a garage. And he was only, who we thought, was the only wealthy man in the village because he had a car.
He had a car.
Swanee was our paperman, and we used to get our papers at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Because he used to go around all the pubs on the way there.
Okay. And going back to the growing of the vegetables, did you have any pesticides or herbicides?
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all?
Nothing at all, but we didn't have any problems with it.
So it was all totally, as we would say, organic?
Totally organic, everything. And I can remember building the potato cloches for the winter time. So we dig a big hole, line it with straw, put the potato crop in there, cover it with straw, then soil over the top. Once a week, just open it and take the potatoes out for what you needed, so you never bought any potatoes.
So that was like a kind of a larder?
Yes, it was called a cloche.
Yeah.
And that was our larder, for the potatoes, and then everything else, obviously, you just took it up as you needed it.
Yeah. And what about fruit?
Nothing. Oranges at Christmas.
Oh, right. No, sorry, I meant like soft fruit.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. Right, so we would have black currants.
Yeah.
Blackberries, I think, and then because around here there was quite a lot of the farmland was given over to blackberries and black currants and gooseberries. We had gooseberries as well, so gooseberries would be again.
When you say the farmland was given over, how do you mean?
Well, the Normans, as you go past the Normans on the way down there, that big field on the left as you drive towards Hellington was black currants, bushes, fully. And we would pick those during the school holidays, and Mrs. Andrews, that would be the grandmother of Mr. Andrews now, she would come across and bring cold tea in the afternoon. She'd ring the bell and we'd all go and have the tea, but we'd all help each other picking them.
So that was sort of like charity, or
no, we got paid for it.
You got paid.
We got paid for it. You'd earn a little bit of money.
And you because you'd give them the harvest.
Yeah, we'd give them the harvest. So we were picking it for them. They were growing it commercially.
Got it,
obviously, then there was also quite a few orchards where you go down Rookery Hill and you turn into what we called Air Force Lane, because there I don't know if many of you know, but there used to be a dummy airfield there during the war. You can see the air raid shelter is still there, so we were bombed a lot here. Because the Germans obviously followed the river in. They used to light all the bonfires there, and they would drop the bombs here rather in Norwich, because obviously they thought they were over Norwich. So, but that was all orchards down there. They were mostly apples down that side. So again, during the summer we would pick apples for money, and that would be how we would earn what we'd call pocket money. But
did you get to eat much of this fruit?
We could eat it as we picked it. We could eat what we liked. And obviously, in the evenings, we might help ourselves to one or two.
Right. But you wouldn't have no fruit from abroad?
No, nothing. No. Never saw things like bananas or anything like that. The local shop would never stock it because no one could afford to buy it. You just didn't have the money. But we had a bus into Norwich. It used to be one at 7:30 in the morning, come back at 6 o'clock at night. That would be it. That's your bus service. And I would probably go into Norwich probably once a month with my mother. That would be it, really.
Did you ever go to London? Did you ever go to the seaside?
We used to have a Sunday school outing. We used to go to Galston, and the Haddiscoe Bridge as it is now, we always remember used to get off. There was a wooden bridge, and you'd have to get off the bus, and the bus would go over. We'd all walk over the bridge and get on the bus. Always remember.
Oh my goodness!
Because it just couldn't take the weight.
Yeah. Amazing. So going back to the orchards, there were a load of orchards, and there were also market gardens.
Oh, there's 7 market gardens here.
Right.
Yeah. So the market gardens were basically where St Margaret's Way. That was Mr. Eastle. Then Mr. Earls, who his wife. Oh no, it's his. As Mr. Earls, who had the market garden opposite here, it's his daughter-in-law who lives there now. Then further down we had Tom Saunders. Where I live on the left, I live just down the road from here now. Opposite us was Tom Saunders. Then as you went down, there was some smaller ones. Then right at the bottom of where you turn left into Surlingham Lane, there was another big market garden there, mostly fruit. We can remember we used to do a lot of fruit picking in there. That was mostly apples again. And then as you turn left into Surlingham Lane on the right-hand side, another big market garden, Mr. Saxon. My mother used to work there quite a lot. So you'd move around all the different market gardens as they needed help with the crops. The local ladies, that's how they earn extra money, really.
And do you know where the produce from the market gardens
Yes,
went?
right. So we would have a lorry come through every day, or the market gardens would stack in wooden boxes outside their market garden gate entrances. And we'd have 2 or 3 different vegetable wholesalers from Norwich come along and pick them up. And one of my entrepreneurial things that I did, I used to pick watercress from the beck.
Oh, yeah.
And my grandfather, who had a market garden, he would sell it, and I would perhaps get sort of 2 shillings a week for doing that. But I would get bathfuls of watercress. I mean, nobody bothered about anything that was going into the stream. I mean, there was all cattle and everything there, but we used to play in there and swim in there as well, so it didn't make any difference. But that was...
So you mentioned playing, swimming, etc. So you're at school, then you're working 2 hours in the garden after school.
Then
and
playing football in School Lane after that.
Right.
Then obviously once a week we'd have a youth club here on a Wednesday evening. In here, yeah. My brother started the youth club in 52, 53, and we had a partition where that there. We had a full-size snooker table up that end, table tennis table here, and a little bar in the corner where you could have cooks, and sometimes you'd have an aspirin with a cook, and that would really make that was on the edge. We were on the edge.
That was on the edge. And just probing a bit more into the transport side of things. You didn't travel very much. Did people use bikes a lot?
Yes.
Everybody Tell us about how people use bikes.
Well, everybody had bikes.
Adults, children, old people.
Older children. When I started work, so I'm saying that Wink's garage was on Rookery Hill. They were called Canadian Dodgers. They were left-hand drive Canadian vehicles. They were supplied when they built Seething Airfield during the war. Mr. Wink was the contractor who laid the concrete for the runways. And then every day, as they used to go into work, we all used to have our biking into work when I was 16, but we'd all be at the top of the hill there, and as they pulled out, they'd load our bikes onto the lorries, and we'd get a lift into Norwich. And that because we knew all the drivers. So that was because everybody knew everybody.
Yeah, there sounds like there was a lot of sort of friendship, informal collaboration.
I mean, if you had a car came through the village you didn't know, that was an occasion. But there wasn't many cars. I mean, I could tell you that the registration, Mr. Bullock, who was our teacher, was DAB 72, DAB 72. The paperman was SBJ 127. We just knew that, because there was only 3 or 4 cars there.
Right.
As I said, my grandmother's cousin, he was the guy who owned Culling's Coaches, which was the local coach service. So that would come through here, and that would take... Obviously, when I passed my 11th plus, but unfortunately, my mother couldn't afford to send me to grammar school, so I started at Framingham Earl when the first day it opened. I was one of the first pupils in. We used to have a bus through to there then back again.
Okay.
And that was it. So probably I'd go into Norwich once a month if I was lucky.
And tell us now, Paddy, a little bit about how things evolved. So for example, what happened to the market gardens? What happened to the orchards?
Yeah, okay. So gradually they started to be built on. That's basically what's happened. I think St Margaret's Way was probably one of the first ones. That was 1970, because that was being built when I bought my house. We moved in 1970. So I moved away from here in 1964 when my mother remarried, and I moved into Norwich for a couple of years before I married, and that completely changed from that point, really. That's when I can see it change completely. Further down, 1 or 2 people started to sell plots of land, and that gradually expanded. But that wasn't till sort of late 60s that anything changed, really. From the end of the war through to 65, this place was exactly the same as it was. It just didn't change.
And tell us a little bit about how the sewage situation evolved.
Right, okay, so the sewers were put in here. So if I go back to our house, the council house, we had no running water at all.
Yeah.
So in probably 62, I think they put a cold water pipe into the kitchen, and we had a sink installed, and then the drain went through the wall, and then we had a bucket outside to catch the water. So that was the council were really pleased that they did that. And then I think after I moved away, obviously that changed, but the sewer was actually put in here. We moved in 1970, and it was 72, 73 then when we had sewers laid. And I was quite lucky really, because my wife was a very attractive young lady at 22, and the guy who used to empty the cesspits was quite taken with her. So I used to stand there on the side of the road, because we're this clay down here, and we had our septic tank emptied every week. So I am sure whether because she liked him and he liked her. No, the clay here, when you emptied the septic tank, the water just ran straight back into it.
Okay.
So the sewers were put in, and also at the same time we were lucky to get mains gas as well.
Okay.
Which is very unusual for villagers in this area, but for some reason we got mains gas as well.
Yeah.
So that made a huge difference to everything.
So in a minute I'll come to you for questions, so be thinking about your questions, but I've got one more sort of culminating question for you, Paddy. So you've given us a really vivid account, and I'm sure that lots of people are thinking, oh wow, there's some things in there that we should really learn from, and if only we hadn't lost all those orchards and that kind of thing. But also, some of what you describe sounds quite hard. So you were quite poor. You had to work 2 hours a day after school. You didn't have sewage in a main system until 1972, etc., etc. If you try to compare what life was like then when you were a kid with what life is like today, how do you see the comparison?
I wouldn't want to be a child now, to be quite honest. I think I was very lucky. We were all terribly poor, but none of us knew it, because we were all in the same boat. And we had no aspirations to improve our lifestyle at all, because we didn't know. We had no information, no internet. We were a little village, and my wife comes from Surlingham, and that was an adventure to go into Surlingham. Honestly. But it was. I mean, that would be a big thing for me to... I used to skip Sunday school sometimes, and I'd go out and cycle round through Ashby, and sometimes I'd go through Surlingham as well. And as an 11-year-old, that was an adventure. A real adventure to do that.
So are you saying that although your life was simple and poor, were there lots of adventures?
Yeah. We had great fun. We used to play what we call down the low meadow. So as you go towards Hellington, and you go past the Normans and past the field, and you start to turn left. There's a gateway there, and you go through there. We'd go down there for about half a mile, and we'd set up camp, and we'd camp there for days. We wouldn't come home for days. My mum, with my older brother, he was 6 years older than me, so he would be 12.
Right.
And about 10 of us, we camped down there.
So you were 6 years old?
I was 6 years old.
And you would camp down there for days?
Down there for days, yeah. And with my
no
12-year-old brother. No adults whatsoever. Never saw an adult.
Right.
And we blocked the river with the stream up the beck. So we'd have
you saw like beavers?
Yeah, beavers. About 3 foot of water, so we could swim in there and wash.
Right. And
that was quite good to actually have a wash, because we had no showers, no baths. So we had a tin bath on a Friday night.
Right.
So to get in that stream was quite exciting.
That is just so interesting that you describe this life, which to many people will sound like quite a hard life.
No, it's
but
not
it
hard.
seems to me...
Well, it was, but it wasn't.
Yeah. And your judgment is... that on balance, the life then was
better than it is now.
So interesting.
I would go back straight away and do that. But what that gave me also was drive.
Right.
I've been a workaholic now all my life, and I've had lots of businesses, and it just drives me crazy, the attitude of people now. I know I shouldn't say it, but you just get on and do the bloody thing. Get on with it and work. That's what I did, and I was 10 years old.
Did you do that as a kid?
Right. Yeah, of course I did. I was 10 years old. I had I had a paper round on a Saturday. I used to bike to what was the Stracey Arms at Kirby Beaton, and I would deliver papers and collect the money for Swanee, who was the paperman who was in the pub. So he would go straight, first of all, to the Woods End. Right. So I would do all Bramerton, Kirby Beaton, give him the money, back through Bramerton into Rockland, down the New Inn, give him the money, Claxton, down to the Folly, give him the money, then Surlingham. And then I realised, I thought I was 10, I thought, well, I'm getting £1 for this on a Saturday.
Right.
If I get 3 people to do that and pay them 5 shillings, because there's 20 shillings in a pound, I had 5 shillings and I didn't do any work. And that's how it started. I had a new bike, and everyone... That's right. So and I could come in the youth club and buy 2 Cokes instead of 1.
So that's how you began your life as an entrepreneur, and you were 10 years old?
10 years old, yeah.
You
had no choice.
Yeah.
No help.
Yeah.
But all my brothers have been the same. We were all in the same boat, and they all most of them ended up working for me, but then they had other business as well. But everyone I know in the village, they all worked hard, and most of them have done quite well for themselves.
Just one more question before I go to the room then. Yeah, no, but this has occurred to me on the basis of what you said. Were people, so they were poor, they didn't have food from far away, etc. Were people healthy?
Probably not.
Right.
But we didn't. I mean, as I said, my father died. I had pleurisy for a year. I had a year off school my father died when I was 6. From 6.5 to 7.5, I spent a year in bed. Mm-hmm. And Mrs. Ellis, who was the teacher at the school, Ted Ellis, the naturalist, that was his wife. Yeah. She used to come to my house every afternoon for an hour and sit with me and do lessons with me.
Oh, wow.
Not paid for doing it at all.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was how things were. She knew that we were struggling, and she gave me time.
Folks, who would like to ask a question of our incredible raconteur here? What else would you like to know or probe into?
Right, I'll go with
John.
Yeah. What happened about milk and things in those days?
Milk. Okay, so we had 2 milk deliveries. Mr. Alderton was the main milkman, and Mrs. Ellis. So there was 2 milk people. That would come in a big churn. They'd carry the churn to the door, and I'll have a pint, and you give them a jug, and they'd scoop it into the churn, and you got milk delivery. Simple.
So
no bottles.
No waste.
No waste. No. Yeah. No fridge. We had a meat fridge in the pantry, stood on the concrete floor. There was a wooden box with little holes in the front, and everything was kept in there to keep it cool.
Mm-hmm. Do you know where the milk came from?
It would came from Langley, from the farm at Langley.
Mm.
Yeah.
Be raw milk as well.
Raw milk. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. Oh, sorry.
That's it. I can go over now.
You said about passing 11 plus, but you weren't able to take up your scholarship.
Yeah.
Was that a common experience, and did it,
not really common, no. I suppose out of the class that I was in, I think 4 of us passed the scholarship, and 3 of them took up further education. 2 went to Thorpe Grammar School, 1 went to Wyndham College. Yeah.
Did that make any difference to you?
Did it make any?
Friendships?
I think my life would have changed completely, because I love history and geography, and I never had a chance to really. I think I would have majored on that, and that would have been brought out of me better than it was. So that did. I mean, at the time it didn't have a big impact, but I think later in life it would have done. Yeah.
Oh yes.
What did you use for heating before gas?
Well, we just had fire.
Just fires. And
that was normally wood and coal. So you'd have a delivery of coal once every fortnight, 100-weight sacks. And so for cooking, we had the kitchen. We had a kitchen range was built into the wall. So we had a fireplace that heated on the left-hand side the oven, and on the right-hand side a boiler, a big boiler, copper boiler, And obviously the hot water for the bath would come from the copper boiler, and my mother would cook in the oven. We had no electric ovens. No.
Do you know where the wood came from?
Just local, where we could, we would buy, or we'd pick up wood as well. We'd go out sometimes and forage for wood. Yeah, you used to just, if a tree fell down, that wouldn't be down for long. Someone would have it.
Peter?
I wasn't going to say anything, but it did make me reflect. It's very similar to my parents' upbringing, but they were in Yorkshire and both brought up in small.
Oh, yeah.
Again, self-sufficient, very poor. But the big change, I think, for my parents was the war. My dad went to the Navy, went round the world, and didn't want to go back to farming. So he could have been a farmer. I could have been a farmer. But he didn't want to. He'd seen he wanted to get out of the hard work and the dirt and the having to work in the snow and the rain and stuff like that. But they were completely self-sufficient. My grandparents, my parents. But I think it was the war, and then things like milk marketing board, potato marketing board, and stuff like that, which controlled the produce. And I think my uncle was younger, didn't go into the war. He had the first tractor that came in, because they had horses, they were plowed with horses and stuff like that. And I think the tractor must have been brought in probably from America during the war, and I think that changed a lot of way.
Yeah, I mean the farm here had 40 employees when or as you come up again up Rookery Hill on the left-hand side, the older houses are all Mr. Andrews' workers lived in those, and others on the other side. So he had about 12 houses here, but there was 40 people worked on the farm then, with horses. I mean, my brother lost a two just opposite here, in the gateway opposite here. One of Freddie Earl's horses stood on his foot when he was helping them with it, and they had to amputate his tooth. But that was just things that happened. Yeah. But we all helped each other. We would all help in the harvests. Everyone would go and be stacking the corn up and the hay and everything. But that was part work, part play, really. But we just used to do it.
That's really interesting. Part work, part play.
Yeah, didn't get paid for it. But then probably he'd given Mum probably 3 or 4 cabbages and things like that. Okay. Yeah, so you get paid in kind. Yeah. And that was a lot of things did like that.
And what about, Peter mentions tractors.
Yeah.
What did, when you were doing your 2 hours a day and growing all your own vegetables and stuff, did you have any machines?
No, fork and a spade.
Fork and a spade?
Yeah, and a rake.
And a rake.
And a croom. I can remember the croom. Yeah. So that was all we had. Yeah, nothing else. No.
Yeah. John.
Yes, Paddy, you mentioned there are lots of market gardens around here.
Yeah.
I'm interested on the competition between them.
No competition.
Did they sort of cooperate and sort of not tread on each other's toes?
No, because they could. You could sell everything you grew, because that all went to Norwich Market. No competition, nothing at all like that at all. As I said, and so many of them all kept rabbits, because rabbits was the staple food, staple meat. I mean, chickens, we wouldn't think of eating a chicken, because chickens were for eggs. you don't eat the thing that lays the eggs, do you, sort of thing. So, never eat chickens.
There wasn't one crop that stood out, as it were, that was sort of Rockland known for at all?
No, not really. No, I don't think so. No, they just used to grow whatever they could. Yes, used to grow a lot of celery. Yeah, I can remember celery quite a bit. Yeah.
So in terms of your diet, you're eating a lot of rabbit, you're eating potatoes, you're eating a range of other essential veg. Did you eat many sweets, cakes?
No, a treat would be to go down to the post office and get a stick of sherbet. You get the licorice to go in and suck it.
Yeah.
And then if you really had a treat, you would put the sherbet in a glass of water and it'd be a fizzy drink. And that was really good. That was a treat.
And how often would you have something like that?
Once a month.
Once a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
So other than rabbit, what did you eat no other meat other than rabbit?
Not really. No. You didn't go out and eat anything, so you had mostly stews. So the rabbit was cut up into bits and just put in the stew, and the stew would be on the fire, and you'd eat that today, you'd eat it tomorrow.
Did you used to get cheese from the farms?
No, we used to buy cheese from the shop. Yeah, cheese would be sold at the local village shop. Yeah, and your sugar would be, obviously they'd weigh it into a bag for you, and you didn't get pre-packed £2 bags. That would be a big sack of it in the back, and he'd just weigh it in for you. Yeah.
So what did you have for lunch? You had rabbit stew in the evening.
What did we have for lunch? Probably a sandwich. Yeah. Oh, so we would start off with bread and milk in the morning, and obviously we were at school, so we had school lunches. We again, because my father had died, I had assistance with paying for that. I think we used to get about a shilling a week, 5 pence or whatever, to pay for the school meals. So we had school meals, but a lot of the children whose parents were still alive were probably worse off than I was, because I had assistance because my mother was a widow. But they would just bring sandwiches and an apple or something like that. Nothing exotic like bananas.
Was there any fish brought into the village?
Fish? No. I can't ever remember eating fish. No.
What about chicken and eggs?
Eggs, yes, but chicken's very rare.
You didn't eat the chicken?
No, they were quite expensive. Chicken was quite expensive.
What about eels?
Eels, yeah. Eels were caught down in the Broad. Scientific Fuller was a friend of my mother's. There's one or two photographs in the air. I don't know, there's one up there. No, there used to be one in Hayes. His name was Scientific Fuller. He was a chap who'd been to university and then lived on a houseboat in Rockland.
Presumably Scientific wasn't his actual first name.
No, it wasn't. But that was what he was known as, right. Scientific Fuller. I can remember, I never met him, but my mum talked about him. But yeah, he used to be the main eel catcher. But I didn't like eels because they were very muddy. They were always gritty. No, I didn't like them. But yeah, I can remember my brothers catching eels. I had older brothers and they would go fishing down there and catch eels. But no, we didn't have fish. No.
Was there a bakery in the village?
No.
No ovens? Or...
No ovens. Bread would be delivered twice a week. Howlets in Loddon. Howlets from Trowse would deliver Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And Clements, that was the other baker in Loddon, they would deliver on a Tuesday. But you didn't necessarily have a delivery every day, you could have a choice. And also, this will amaze you really, about, you order online now and you get your groceries delivered. We had the same thing. International tea stores. So the International, my mum would have 2 books. So she would write in her order, give it to the man as he came round on a Monday. He would take the book, and obviously next week he would bring that order, and she would give him another book for the next week. So we had a delivery from the international stores, so we didn't buy everything down the local shop.
So what kind of things would come on that delivery?
Probably tea, and I really don't know, to be honest. I never, again, didn't take much notice of it, but obviously a lot of the groceries, the post office was mainly a post office. There wasn't much in there apart from 1 or 2 sweets, and you'd have Corona. Again, you'd have a delivery. Corona lorry would come around once a week, and you could buy fizzy, Dandelion and Burdock was another one that was a bit on the edge. So, yeah.
Do you know why there's an unusual number of walnut trees in Surlingham?
Why? Because there's a lot of squirrels. No. Well, there's Walnut Hill, isn't there?
Yeah. Was there a nursery or anything? Was there an area?
There was a nursery down there, but I don't know whether they grew walnuts. So I should have asked my wife. She was born on Walnut Hill in a wooden hut. Her dad's house was bombed during the war, and they lived in a wooden hut, which is now Bramerton Village Hall.
No.
So she should have opened the village hall, really, because she was born in the wooden hut.
Wow. And what about other life essentials, Paddy? So I'm thinking about things like the actual construction of houses, etc. Were many of the ingredients local and reeds or
right? So you
or...
had the brickworks here at Rockland, which was quite famous. Barclays Bank, the old Bank Plain in Norwich, was built of Rockland brick. And Horry Baker, who died about a year ago, he used to work in the brickworks down here behind the new inn, and obviously they used Rockland Stay to transport them away. And then there was Wally Mason, who still lives in the village. He's a reed cutter, but his dad was a reed cutter, so I can remember him. And then there was Archie Taylor, who used to hire the boots out.
So Rockland Stay was very much a working...
Oh yes, absolutely working, yeah.
And was there much else that was garnered from the Broad and the surrounding marshes?
No, mostly the reeds. There used to be huge piles of reeds there. I suppose this at the end of the summer, is it when they cut? I can't remember now. When they cut the reeds, is it? What time do they cut them? In the autumn, I think. Yeah, late autumn. And I can remember huge stacks, like haystacks really, of reeds. And they used to have a wherry come along and they'd load them on the wherry. My mother said she was born at the top of Newin Hill and she learned to ride a bike down Newin Hill, and thankfully there was a stack of reeds because she went straight into it. But that was always down there. So you'd have the bricks from the stay and also the reeds. And Archie used to hire his boots out. So we used to get one or two people come to Rockland and go out on the Broads. It'd just be rowing boots. Okay. But they were full of holes. So
a little bit of what we would call tourism. Just a
little bit of tourism. Yeah. That would be the only thing, really. Probably centred around the social life in Rockland was the school. We'd have a gym class on a Friday night. The headmaster, Mr. Bullock, was an ex-RAF pilot, and he was also a keen footballer and very keen on gymnastics. We used to win all the sports events in the local area because that's all we used to do was play sports. We'd have netball, everything in the Margaret Mac. That would be. We used to have a travelling cinema once a month would come round in the Margaret Mac, and then obviously we had the local football club. I played for that from when I was 16 to when I was retired at 40.
So were people quite fit?
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, you never saw a fat person. Not really, because the diets were totally different. Because we ate what we produced. Really, that's it, isn't it? And you knew where it came from. Yeah.
So was the village green then for you to play football?
No. We play as kids. We play in School Lane because there's no traffic. No. And there was a market garden on the right hand side, and on the left hand side, on the corner here, was a lady called Sophie Yallop, who we wouldn't dare kick the ball into her garden. She'd come out with a broom handle after, so that the goals were further up. But we played on, as you come up Rookery Hill, the meadow there, that was where the football pitch was. And we played there from 1950 to about 1989, 1990, when the football rules changed. You had to have showers in the change. We had an old railway carriage, and that was our changing room. But then the rules brought in that you had to have showers, so we moved to Norwich, and the club folded within 2 years. But we used to have fantastic social life here. We used to have a bingo every Friday night. We used to have Christmas dances with Wally Mason, who's still alive as the reed cutter. He always came as dressed as John Travolta in his white suit and flares. I don't think he meant to do that, but we always knew that. But when the club disbanded, we had £2,500 in the club in 1980. That was fabulous. That was a fabulous thing. The village life here revolved around the football club. That was absolutely tremendous. And at Christmas, we'd have Rockland versus Surlingham. That was the hardest game of the year.
Ooh.
Yeah, we play the home game on Boxing Day,
Right.
and then it'd all be down the Star afterwards. And then we play at Surlingham on New Year's Day, and then down Surlingham Ferry. And
Who used to win?
Oh, well, I don't know really. I wouldn't like to say, but I've still got the scars. Because we all played in the same team, but we were very competitive when we had that. And I once did field 13 players at half time, and they didn't count, and we did win, and I never told them. But that was like that. But we just knew everybody. I mean, now we still all meet up. I've got all the shirts in my garage from 1960.
Wow.
And 2 of our ex-members have been buried in the shirts.
Oh.
Yeah.
Where is the football pitch in Surlingham?
In Surlingham, we used to play behind the school.
Okay.
Or we play at Bramerton, what was then the remand home, which is now, whatever they call it now, don't they? Bramerton Lodge. Yeah, that was a remand centre for naughty boys and girls then. And they had a nice pitch there, so we played there sometimes. And we used to hear, when one of them escaped, we could hear the little hooter go. They used to escape, yeah. You know, used to have the hooter go off, and everyone would lock the doors. Because someone from the remand home had escaped.
You say everyone would lock the doors. Does that imply that?
Well, no one locked the doors. No, you didn't. Well, I mean, I can remember on a Monday we'd have the milkman, the probably the coalman, the insurance man. My mum would leave money on the table, 3 piles of money. The doors open, they just walk in and help themselves.
Get the right pile.
Yeah, get the right pile. Yeah, they'd know which was the right pile because they'd know how much it was. Yeah. So you never locked doors.
Was there any country dancing either at school or in
No.
the village?
Well, we had a maypole.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, we had a maypole, so Mrs. Ellis used to make us do the maypole. We weren't too keen on that, but we used to get to school. We'd probably be at school at 7 in the morning because we all played football in the playground. So we'd be there. Yeah, we'd be there at 7. Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, because we all came from the village, so we all knew each other.
Yeah.
And then, say, I'd do 2-3 hours in the afternoon. Not all of the children would do that. I did it because obviously my father had died. Because all the men, I mean, my wife talks about that. Her dad was a bricklayer. And he would go to work. He'd come home at 5 o'clock. He'd sit down. He'd have his tea out in the garden from 5:30 till it was dark. Big greenhouses. Everything was grown at home. And perhaps they'd go down the pub on a Friday night for a couple of hours. That was a recreation. Because, again, my dad had died, so I didn't go down. I can remember being down the pub with my mum in the back room watching the Eurovision Song Contest the first time. I think that started in about 1960.
What would people drink in the pub?
Pale ale, I suppose. Yeah, there were bottles of pale ale. I think there was mild. That would be the pump. Would be mild.
That would be the cheapest.
I suppose so. Yeah.
Any more questions?
So did they used to have a cobbler in the village and made shoes?
My granddad repaired shoes. Yeah, it was another one of his jobs, apart from growing all the vegetables and the rabbits. He was the cobbler. Everyone had another string to their bow, so to speak.
What were some of the other strings?
What would you need to have done then?
Funerals?
Funerals, yeah. Well, that'd be Mr. Parker, where they just pulled it. He was the blacksmith. He did my dad's funeral. So my dad died, so he came up and measured my dad up, built the coffin. His wife came along, laid my dad out, brought the coffin up. My dad was in the front room for 3 days before he was buried, and everyone came round. So the blacksmith was also the undertaker. So it was all in the village, all kept in the village. There were several sort of builders and such who would do repairs and things like that. Just further down the street, Mr. Jordan was a saddler. He used to make saddles for horses. He had a little shop just opposite where I live, in the front garden. He was sadly killed at Halsham Market. A lorry reversed over him. It was unfortunate, but yeah.
Bike repairs?
Bike repairs, yeah. That would be Mr. Yallop, who I said his wife was Sophie, and he would do all the repairs, again, in a little shed in the back, so anything you needed done. But most of it you did yourself.
Right.
Because they weren't too technical, really. There was no dry gears and things like that on the bikes then. No.
What about laundry? Did your mum do all?
Oh yeah, I did all the laundry.
The
Yeah.
laundry didn't go out at all.
No,
Not even sheets?
no. Everyone would be washing on a Monday. Yeah, yeah.
Mangle?
Mangle, yeah, wooden mangle, yeah. I would sometimes do it. Also, another part-time job of mine was pumping the organ in the church. Blanche Blake, she was the district nurse, and if I wasn't pumping hard enough, she would have her glass to give me that.
Blanche, my neighbour.
Pardon?
Blanche.
Blanche Blake, her name was. Yeah, she lived just down the street. Again, district nurse, lived in the village. So she delivered all the children. She delivered me when I was born. Yeah.
What about material? Did that come from Norwich or?
What do you mean
To
material?
make clothes?
Make clothes?
Or were they just-
Yeah, no, I would think it would be one of your visits to Norwich to either buy clothes or to buy the material to make clothes. But again, yeah, my mum used to make us shirts and trousers and things like that. That's what they learned to do when they were younger.
Your mum would make quite a lot of your clothes?
Yeah, she'd make them, yeah. Or they were handed down from other people. We used to share clothes amongst all the families.
Yeah.
Once I'd grown out of it, that wouldn't be thrown away. That would go to someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shoes the same. You know, you wouldn't buy new shoes. You would have them passed from... Well, I had brothers, so they came down. My mum just kept them. And when I needed shoes, I had my brother's shoes.
You mentioned you weren't so keen on the maypole.
No.
Were there other festivals? Were there festivals that were in existence that are not really so popular now?
Not really, no. I think the Maypole one was particular. Mrs. Ellis, she liked to do that sort of thing. We obviously had the Christmas concert in the Margaret Mac.
What about Easter?
Easter, no.
Not a big deal?
Not a big deal, no.
Okay,
No.
interesting.
And none of the other holidays were looked upon as holidays, really.
You mean people sort of kept on working?
Yeah, just kept working through it,
Yeah.
Guy Fawkes was quite a big thing, though. We all had bonfires.
Right.
And, we used to wait till the village policeman used to come along. We used to fire rockets at him. But I know where you are. But that was all good fun, yeah. He threatened to lock us in the cell in the old police house in the village.
There's a police house in the village?
As you go turn left into Surlingham Lane,
right.
down the hill,
Yeah.
you've got the sharp S-bend,
Yeah.
the house sitting in there. That's the police house, yeah.
Wow.
And PC Brown, who was...
So is that like a police station?
Yeah, it's a police station, yeah. And it's got cells and everything. Had a
Wow.
cell. Yeah. Never used them much. No. But, but he would patrol around here on his bicycle.
What was the worst thing that ever happened in the village back in those days?
I can't actually remember any disasters at all, really. No.
Plane.
Pardon?
The plane crash.
What, out the back?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've got photographs of it taken off. What, you mean the little plane?
No, the plane crashed near the school.
Oh, yeah, the V2 rocket. I had two brothers in the school who were hospitalised. They both had perforated eardrums. V2 landed in just opposite where you live.
Wow.
In Starbit. Yeah.
Wow.
Starbit, not Starpiece. Yeah. That's where we used to have our go-karts. We made them out of prams and we used to race down the hill there. That was because that was about 5 or 6 foot wide then.
Yeah, it's gradually filled in over the years, isn't it?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and because again, as I said, I've been here a long while. My great-great-grandfather used to keep the pub, and I was told that my father was the font of all knowledge because he was Irish but went to Harvard University. And when he came back here, he used to go down the pub and everyone would ask him questions about America and everything like that.
Well, Paddy, we've been asking you questions for a long time. I think you've
I enjoy it. I will never stop. But I think it's quite important to actually relay things like this. Yeah. I've actually done a map of the village in the 1950s. Several of us got down the New Inn one night and we've written down all the names of everyone who lived in all the houses and the market gardens and everything. So it's only on a big piece of cardboard. But
in the 5 Mile Network, we would love to see that.
Yeah,
we would be really interested to see exactly where were those market gardens and the orchards and stuff,
Yeah.
especially. because that tells you something about what grows where and that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I spoke to a friend of mine here, and he couldn't get here tonight, but he would like to come along, and perhaps you'd like to talk to David. He was a little bit older than me, so you get a different angle on things.
Oh, okay, that could be a future meeting.
He's probably 10 years older than me, so he lived through the war here, and that would be perhaps interesting for us.
Yeah. Let's thank our amazing speaker here, folks. Thank you. So we have a little while longer. There'll be a bit more tea, I think, if people want it, and then there's plenty more seeds and plants and stuff to take away. So don't feel obliged to rush off. Remember that we meet on the first Monday of every month. And in the summer, we go to people's gardens as well and look at what they're doing in people's land. So do make sure you're signed up. Anything else we should mention, Juliet?
No, I think that's about it.
Yeah. If you're signed up, you'll get the reminders. But it's the first Monday of every month. And that's it, folks. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lovely.